about different outcomes, different speakers, different formats, and different assignments, and we landed here today with our extraordinary speaker, Duany. So please join us in welcoming Duany to our campus. Duany is a South Sudanese and U.S. American movie actor and former refugee born in southern Sudan, who was resettled to the United States at the age of 15. A survivor of the tragic exodus and an estimated 20,000 Sudanese children, Ger, one of the lost boys of Sudan, is an epitome of resilience. Ger has dedicated his time to ongoing high-profile humanitarian efforts. So we are very happy to have Ger here tell us about his journey and his story. You'll have the opportunity to hear his story, then we'll have a brief session of questions and answers. Then we're going to ask you to take some time to do some internal and individual reflection, and then we're going to ask you to talk amongst yourselves. So what we were kind of hoping with how you were seating is that you're sitting with folks that are not necessarily folks in your class. So when we get time to do that reflection, we're going to ask you to do a little bit of shuffling, so that way you can have a richer conversation with folks that are learning different things and see how it all tied into today's conversation. I also want to take some time to thank the faculty members that were really instrumental in putting this program together. So if you're here, please stand so we can acknowledge you. Special thanks to Professor Jason Leggett from Criminal Justice, Professor Michael Palladino from Fashion Design, Professor Arturo Enamorado from Sociology, Professor Luz Martin del Campo from Anthropology, Professor Joanna Malbeck from Education, Professor Jamie Arusi from Political Science, and Professor Frank Procaccio from the English Department. And I want to thank all of the other faculty that brought their classes today and showed their support. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ger to the podium. Thank you, Ger.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody doing today? Should I stand here or should I go over there? Which one you guys prefer? I think I should stand over there. Okay, can you guys hear me clearly? Yeah. Well, first I just want to thank you for inviting me here, to all the faculties who really organized for me to be here. I came all the way from South Sudan, Uganda, and then Kenya to here. And it was a long trip. You know, when I'm being invited to really come speak to the students, it's always like the things that really kept me up all night so that I can get to talk to you guys and I get excited. So I'm happy to be here. My name is Duany, and I was born in South Sudan. Now it's called South Sudan. It used to be Sudan. So I live in a small village called Lit. In 1983, before the previous civil war really happened, where I was displaced. So the reason I'm here today, I just want to tell you guys my story about how I became a refugee and how I find myself a home where you guys are here in the United States. When I was a small boy at the age of 7, 1983, the civil war came to my village. And me and my mom, my older brother, and little sister that come after me, we were living in a small village, and then one morning, the civil war spilled over to my own village, and then the helicopter came from the central government, and then they poured the fire on top of us. And then my mom, my sister, and my older brother and I, we all ran for our life to run to a thick forest. And little that I know about the Civil War and the helicopter that were bombing us, I was wearing a white uniform, me and my brother, because we started school in Sudan. So I didn't realize that the helicopter can actually see me while running. So my mom pulled me down and my brother, and then he rubbed our clothes with the mud because it was during the rainy season. And I was really angry. Why? My mom made my clothes dirty. She says because helicopter can see anything bright under the thick forest. And then I didn't know that. So she saved my life. So we stay in this forest for like over 6 months, almost throughout the whole year. And the helicopter, they always come every morning to really bomb the village, kill cow, which is our livestock and people. So that's how I was introduced into civil war in Sudan. When the autumn finished, we have to go to another area where we felt like we were safe with our livestock that were left. And then we went and lived in a refugee camp. No, it's not a refugee camp, it's actually a village, a summer camps where our cow can really graze green grass. And then within that camp too, within South Sudan, so now the civil war really happened between the northern Sudanese and a different militia that came to attack the SPLA, which is Sudan People Liberation Movement. And my father is a soldier, and he fight for the SPLA, SPLM. So that war came to us again, and I was still a small boy within that springtime. So that's the war that I ran into a river, me and my mom again, and my little sister. So my mom had twins by that time, and then the guns that they were shooting at us, everybody almost died. So there's a lot of people was just running into the water, and then I ran along with a lot of people. So I crossed the river, and we went on the other side. I could see the men who were shooting at us, me and my mom and my dad. My dad was fighting in the distance, and then somehow maybe they decided not to really kill us. So we survived, and me and my mom and my sisters, we went quite a distance, so you can hear bombardments coming from a distance. So my mom decided to go look for my father in the front line. So she left me with the twins and my other little sister that come after me. She went around, she flipping dead bodies to see if she can find her husband. I said, this woman lost her mind. Why is she looking for a man who's been fighting? Otherwise, we should have been just trying to go toward Ethiopia where we can be safe. So he didn't find my father. My father went separate direction. So my mom came the following night, and then we lived in this small village, and then from there, there was a lot of people were going toward Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was toward the rising sun. So we keep asking, where is everybody going? They say, we go to Ethiopia, there's a refugee camp there, it's going to be a safe place. I've never been to a refugee camp, it was my first time ever. We walk hundreds and hundreds of miles where there's no food, little to drink, meaning water. And then because we moved as a family, it took us overnight to like a year to go to Ethiopia to enter the refugee camps. So I went to the refugee camps, and that's the place where I learned how to read and write my ABC. Because throughout my entire time in Sudan, I've never been to school. So that school, that refugee camp have a school for all the students who their parents were fighting for freedom in Sudan. And then all of us will be placed in that school. And we learned our ABC. We didn't have books like you guys really have and paper. So we always just try to organize ourselves by sitting on the ground, and then you can learn your ABC by having a stick, and then you write on the ground. So that's how I learned my ABC. So from that refugee camps, I stayed there for quite some time, at least about 4 years. By then I'm like 11 years old, and that refugee camp is being run by the Sudan People Liberation Army. So during the day, like this, we always learning. And when the evening come, we had to do military drills. So this is how I became a child soldier in the refugee camps. But we didn't have guns. They didn't train us with guns. They trained us with sticks, and they trained us how to do parade like a military guys. So all of us participate from age of 11 up to age of 18. So I was among the kids. So this is Ethiopia. 4 years, I thought that we have the stability that we were looking for. And then in 1991, Ethiopia collapsed because it was it was a regime that was fighting themselves, and also they kind of unite with our enemies from the central government in North Sudan. So they came and attacked Ethiopia, and Ethiopia collapsed. And then from there, that's the time where all of us were displaced again to South Sudan. And then and that's how I lost contact with my mom and my dad. So I went to Sudan by myself, and my mom went separately with my sisters. And then I walked nights and day by myself until I find a military camps that really took me in. And I became a child soldier when I was 13 years old. And I lived there. I do small tasks for soldiers. I can roll their tobaccos, I can clean, I can bring them water, and if someone is being wounded, I take care of the people. So this is how I did that just to survive, being a child soldier. So I lived with them and until another civil war really came, because they have enemies. So they came and then they attacked us, and I was there, and they killed about 87 to 90 people. So again, I ran in the water and got out of the water, and then I ran into a military cars, and then we ran through the enemy. And then they killed a lot of my friends that I was living with them. But I survived that war, and then that's from there, and then it was like a turning point for me. So I decided to really go to my hometown where I was born. It's called Akobo. It's close to eastern Ethiopia. So I walked there. It took me a week, and then I found my mom and my dad later on, and then I stayed there for a good 6 months. But because I had a dream, I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to go to school. So living in Sudan, we were just preparing ourselves for war all the time. And that in itself was eating me alive. So on February 1993, I decided to really go to Ethiopia again with the groups of guys who were going toward Ethiopia to go and learn, to go to the refugee camps. So I decided to just join them on the street that they were walking into my village. And then I came all the way to Ethiopia before they even have a regime there. So it was a lot of suffering and it was a lot of killing because the regime was not stabilized yet. So somehow I went to a town called Gambela. We stayed over there, and then from Gambela town, and then we had to get like some trucks that smuggled us into Ethiopia, and then we drove across Ethiopia all the way to Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa is the capital of Ethiopia. So from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, we just sleep on the streets, me and my colleagues, and we try to find a way to go to Kenya by foot. So from there, we sneak out of Ethiopia in Addis Ababa, and we climb a big mountain between Kenya and Ethiopia. That took us the entire night. And then going up is so steep, but coming rolling down, it was completely another story. And also it's a highland. It's cold, and we didn't have any clothes. So I find that it was a very challenging trip for most of us. And we were getting lost in the thick forest, and also there's a lot of animals that was attacking us. So we had to move together. So this is how I really, I made it to Kenya. I went to a refugee camp called Walda. You see now, that's 4 different refugee camps. So I stayed in this refugee camp called Walda. And then when Walda is a big refugee camp with a lot of Ethiopians, there's a lot of Rwandese, Zairians, South Sudanese, and also Somali people. So it was a very diverse camps over millions of people. So that camp, somehow, a lot of people hear about refugee camps, but refugee camps are very, very violent places. So even when you leave your country and then you go to a refugee camp, there's a lot of violence there. A lot of people get frustrated because there's a lack of food. Small food, it tends to really frustrate people. So it was a huge battle that really happened between Somali Muslim people and South Sudanese Christians. And also it was horrendous because a lot of people lost their lives, and I was in that fight. So the UN Refugee Agency, which I became like their goodwill ambassador, they decided to break up their refugee camps, and then they moved us completely to a different part of Ethiopia, a different part of Kenya, between Kenya and Somalia, because refugees, when they go to somebody else's country, they don't keep them in the city. They keep them in the borders. And borders are not always safe. So they took us all the way to Somalia, between Somalia and Kenya. At that time too, there was a civil war that was happening in Somalia between Americans and Somalia rebels. So we find that it was a very difficult place. People come at night in our refugee camps as a Sudanese. They look at us as a Christian, and then they shoot at us, and sometimes they get our ration, they take it. So we lived there with the hope that we wanted to go to different part of the world, find an opportunity, maybe go to Norway, or go to Canada, go to Australia. So I stayed there with a bunch of my colleagues until 1990, early 93, 94. I had an opportunity to come to the United States with the resettlement. And I was sponsored by a Lutheran church in Des Moines, Iowa. Me and one of my colleagues named Paul, he was 29 years old, and his cousin, his girl, was 11 years old, and his brother was 13 years old, and I was 16. So it was four of us. We had a form, and then we came to Nairobi. We did medical checks, and there was a bunch of us. Most of us too, we failed from the HIV positive and AIDS. Luckily, my groups, we passed, and then we came to we did like orientation in Nairobi, Kenya, in the refugee camps. So after 3 months, and then after we finished with those orientations, we have our results. Our paperwork was done properly by international organization and migration and the UNHCR, which is UN Refugee Agency, the humanitarian wings of that organization. And then after 3 months, and then they put our names on the board that we're going to be flying, and we had to come to the United States, and I was very excited because I'm going to be finding a new home for me, and I'm going to go to school, because all I ever wanted to do is to just go to school. So I was excited, and then one night we were flown out of Nairobi, Kenya, and then to Frankfurt, and then Frankfurt all the way to JFK here. And then from JFK, then we had to take another airplane to go to Des Moines, Iowa. So the first state that I was settled in was Des Moines, Iowa. Me and Paul, Nyakuma, and both, all four of us, with our social services people, and then they find us a place to stay. And then none of us can really speak English, including Paul. I used to think that Paul was speaking good English when we were in refugee camps. But after we arrived here in America, the language was lost. So we struggled a lot with the language barrier. But somehow we worked closely with the social services people in Des Moines, Iowa. They got us our Social Security, our I-94, and all the documents necessary for us to go to school, especially we, the young one. And Paul had to find a job to work. So Des Moines, Iowa was my first home in the United States. I lived there with Paul and for a year, and after that, because we have many different refugees too who were living in South Dakota, Sioux Falls. Some of them, they were my colleagues when we were living in refugee camps. So I decided to really go to Des Moines, to South Dakota to stay with them because I miss them. I haven't seen them in over a year. So somehow I live in South Dakota, and then I went to high school there. I'm telling you guys this story because I bounced around a lot in the United States. I went to different states, and I went to different high school and colleges. So my second high school was in Sioux Falls. And then from there, I enjoyed being in Sioux Falls, but somehow my living situation was not really stable. I didn't want to go me and Paul, as a teenager, I was not getting along with Paul. So I escaped Des Moines, and then I went and lived in South Dakota. But somehow, I didn't have a guardian there. So I decided to really take another Greyhound bus. And then I went to Indiana because my uncle, who was a professor at Indiana University named Michael Duany, came here in the 80s. And he did a PhD in PhD in politics, and also he was a professor at African Study in Indiana. And he had kids who were my age mate. They all were playing basketball. So we didn't know each other because in Sudan we live in a different city. But somehow, I'm his nephew, so they welcomed me to their own home. And then I went to high school in Bloomington North. And then that's where I started playing basketball seriously. And then because of all of this conflict that I was dealing with, I was having problems with the post-traumatic stress disorder. So basketball was the one thing that really saved my life in the United States. I played at high school level, and then later on I got a scholarship to go to Los Angeles Southwest College for 2 years. And then after that I got another scholarship, and I went to University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, where I graduated. So this is the journey that I have taken and how I end up being here. So after I played basketball and finished, it was the summer of 2023, I was casted in a movie by David O. Russell that I wasn't into movies, but somehow I went to audition, and then I got lucky among other 400,000 to 500,000 people that really wanted to shoot for the role. So, and then I made another transition to get into acting to that movie. And then and I let go of basketball. And basketball was the way that I learned how to really take structure, even in acting. So I enjoy being an actor for quite some time. I've been acting now for over 20-something years. Maybe most of you guys were not even born back then, but that's what happened. The reason I came here to tell you guys this story is because our entire world is being rocked by a lot of civil war. In 2015, when I was a Goodwill ambassador, we have over 60 million refugees globally. And then since the Ukraine war happened, now the refugees, that number kind of doubled up to 130 million people. I can't even begin to tell you about internally displaced persons that are living in their countries, and then they have no any opportunity. Their children are growing up in a camps within their own country because they don't feel safe. So I go around to tell my story so that you guys can have an idea. The world that we live in is very connected. If somebody's really affected by a war somewhere else, it's going to affect us here too. Sometimes you don't know that until the war really come to your doorsteps. It's all of us really struggling with everything. So this is the reason I became a Goodwill ambassador. I share my story globally to speak about how to help refugees and how to really integrate refugees into a new nation that they come in. The reason I'm here is because I was invested. If someone didn't really invest in me, I would not be able to really tell you guys any story or communicate with you. Because the opportunity that were given to me, I tend to really go back and speak to people, young people like you guys, so that you're aware about what's going on. Yes. That's my journey, and then if anyone really have any question, we can just stir it up and we can go in any direction.
Angel, I'm a journalism major. As someone who has experienced both the horrors of war and the power of resilience, how do you maintain hope and optimism in your work, especially when addressing difficult subjects like conflict and displacement?
Oh, that's a good question. War kind of helps you understand yourself. it has to be things that really hold you together from where you come from. So in my case, I knew who I was. You know, I had a solid understanding about who I am, and then I knew exactly what it is that I wanted to do. So, of course, first it was war that really displaced me. I want to survive. But another thing, it was just, I went beyond war. Now I wanted to learn something. So I left my small village to go so far away, thousands of miles, and then I don't get to see my mom for 18 to 20 years just to learn something. And by the time that I really go back, you know, the people that I left behind, they're no longer there. So I knew that I have to do something. So I have to do something, meaning that I have to find me a home. So United States became a second home for me. And even though my home is South Sudan, I still find myself a home here because I became a citizen here. I create more opportunity for myself. And then, and I just have to know that everybody's have a different journey.
Yeah, so it's on a liberal arts major here. So the title of this event is Finding Home Wherever You Are, and you just mentioned how you found home here in the United States. Was that something that you found internally, or did you find that through community with other people?
No, well, home is always where you find people that you really live your life with them, you know, who you really get along with, who you really learn from. So I find a lot of people that I learn from, like Michael is one of my friends, so many things that I've learned from him. And we met like 14, 15 years ago. So I really find home is where the people are and the people that I can live my life with.
And Steve, nice to meet you. We're Duany. Hello, Steve. Nice to meet everyone here. And I'm very happy to be here to listen to your speech. And it was worth coming here very early in Kingsborough. So what I want to know is your super long survivals in the forests you mentioned, and how the amount of force you had to survive in. It makes me wonder how many like survival instincts you've had to have, like when you mentioned 6 months in the forest. That sounds like the Amish country or something. Like, how did you ever like learn about the Amish country, how to survive in the forest?
Yes.
6 months. That's my curiosity.
Okay, that's a good curiosity. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to have an instinct for you to really survive. You know, if you are in a forest, you sometimes as a human being, you may not see what is the animals that is hiding somewhere over there. But your instinct can actually, you can feel it. I can feel when there's a danger around. I used to feel that, and I think I still have it. Maybe I've been very comfortable living here for 30 years, but my instinct was pretty good at that time.
Hi, my name is Alexa. I'm a fashion major. I just want to start by saying that your story is absolutely amazing. Everything that you said, I just find absolutely, like, you're standing here, you've achieved so much, and I think that's absolutely unreal and insane. My question is, how did you find it in yourself to push through everything that you went through? It took years to get you to where you are, so how did it, like, mentally, how did you push through what you went through, and day to day you told yourself to keep going? How did you do it?
Well, I always want to succeed, and this was a place that I know I could succeed. You know, if I don't have to hear any bullets and bombs that are flying over us, so I figured that I'm going to learn something here, and then I knew I was smart enough. If I have an opportunity, I'm going to learn something. So, learning is something that gets me going the most.
Jared, I'm a media arts major. I was curious because you have such a compelling, interesting story. And you're in film. If you were considering turning your story into a film, or if it's too personal of a thing, because that I think a lot of people would blockbuster side of it, you know, there's the Hollywood side of things, but like the very real, very awareness side of it. You know?
That's a good question, actually. You know, projects like film, they always take a long time, you know, to develop them, you know. And even writing a book like that one, it kind of terrified me. To think about the films is another heart attack ahead of me. But yeah, I thought about it. I'm thinking about it, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Michael. Well, because you and I we go way back. We talked about a lot of things that really can empower youth, and especially in developed nations. And my country is one of the developed nations. It's the newest country in the whole world. So, and we just became independent in 2011, and then after we became independent, and then we have a power struggle in the country, and then we went to war since 2013 until 2018. So for all of this time, I just became a goodwill ambassador, and I'm going to all the continents around the world to see where the refugees are, and the statelessness was a big issue too, because there's a lot of people who live globally who have no identity. And I get to learn all of those things from these international organizations like UNHCR and Norwegian's Refugee Council. So for the time where we were going through civil war in my country, I didn't know what direction I have to go for, whether I'm a guy who wanted to go and join the rebel, or I want to join the government, or who am I fighting, because this is my own people fighting themselves. So I was lost a little bit. That's why I became a goodwill ambassador. And then I started to tell my story, and I didn't participate in the war. I tried to just help with the refugees. So for 8 years, I did not go in the country. I was not a good friend of the government and also the rebel, because I'm an independent thinker. So after the COVID-19 in 2020, when they allow people to really travel, I went back to a country, and I finally got to see what is it that my country is really offering, because everybody's known South Sudan for oil, and oil only. So, but I saw other things. I saw an opportunity in the agriculture sector, and also I saw water. Water is a big deal, because South Sudan have a lot of water. We have the Nile, and the water are accessible, but they are not clean. And the poverty line is below any other country you can ever think of. And then that's when I took interest in agriculture, you know, and the resources that South Sudan is really offering. You can't find it anywhere. But lack of leadership in a country, it tends to kill a lot of people, and people are dying from hunger, and it's a bunch of organizations are really holding the country together. But as a diaspora, now we have a bunch of young people who grew up here, and we are interested to really go back home, to really to participate in the agriculture sector. So, which is something that I've been talking to you about. And even now when I'm here to talk to you guys, and I really want to go back home and maybe stay there full time to really start to become a farmer. That's the one thing I'm interested in right now, that breathe on my neck, if I answer your question.
My name is Miriam, and my question was, will
Thank you for coming here and bringing the awareness. My question is, how can students in Kingsborough or like students in New York, as being like 18, 20 years old, 21 years old, can help in situations of like in poverty that's happening around the world? I understand that sometimes we are not aware of this stuff, but what are the basic steps that we can take forward to be able to change the world from our generation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Listen, like conversation like we're having now, this is the beginning of us trying to educate ourselves about all this issue, you know, and also another way is like talking to your own local authority, you know, to tell them about what's going on, you know, globally. Everybody see war all the time, but sometimes it seems like it's so far away from you because it has not come to your doorsteps, you know, but this distraction is everywhere. So we can talk to our local authority, we can have a conversation among ourselves, and then, which is something that I'm really doing. And this is the way that really create an awareness, in my opinion. You know, my work is not for me to convince anybody. It's for me to have a conversation with you guys, and then I'm going to learn something. You're going to learn something from me, and then we go from there. So I would suggest that you talk to your local authority, and then about what you know about the refugees today.
Have you ever thought about going back to Sudan and running for a position of power or government to bring awareness?
And I don't have those aspirations yet. Thanks for the question. No, I don't have those aspirations, but agriculture would be the best way. Yes.
I guess as a follow-up, I can project. As from a public health perspective, what do you feel needs to be prioritized for the South Sudanese people who are really struggling, and you said are getting sick and are impoverished and are hungry? What do you think needs to be done? If you're not going to go run for power.
No, I think, you know, anything to do with health is always very important, because when I go to like internally displaced persons, you know, they don't have clinics where they are living. They don't even have toilets. They don't have water, clean drinking water for their kids. And they don't even have a school or any facility for their kids to really learn anything, you know, and they live within their own country. So anything to do with health would be very helpful for them. And also, you know, returnees, you become a returnee when you leave refugee camp to come back to your country. You're no longer a refugee, you will be a returnee. But they also lived similar way, you know. These are young women with kids, you know, and older people. So they need some sort of health center, you know.
Hello, my name is Lydia, and I'm a fine arts major. And my question is, with all the conflicts going on around the world, like in South Sudan, Congo, Haiti, Palestine, I would like to ask, what are some words of encouragement that you have for refugees coming from those current backgrounds right now? And what are some words of advice you can give to people who would like to help refugees?
That's a good question. You know, with my work, you know, I always go to all the refugee camps in East Africa and also any other place. So it's always a way for me to really share. We can share our own story to each other, so that they know I live in these refugee camps too at some point, you know. And we share our story. We tell each other our story. We also, you know, embrace ourselves. And then that's the one thing that I've been doing. That's the reason it's always make more sense for me to be in the refugee camps rather than I'm going to be running around with the flag of the country and I'm not there. So I go to these places to spend time there, sleep in these places, and then I talk with them. And then it's been very helpful for me, actually. It's more of a therapeutic for me than maybe for them, you know.
Thank you, Gare. How about another round of applause for Gare? Thank you. When we were working to design this event, we realized that a lot of times you're exposed to interesting things, you hear about interesting things, but you don't have time, and then you go on to the next thing. So you don't often have time to think about what you just heard. So each of you has a piece of paper in front of you now, and this is your built-in thinking time. So we're going to give you about 5 minutes now, and if you need an extra sheet, you can raise your hand, we'll make sure you get one. But 5 minutes of just quiet reflection about your impressions. You have the prompt there. I can read it out to you as well. Take 5 minutes to jot down any thoughts, reactions, connections, or ideas that come to mind after Gare's presentation. What did you learn? What elicited emotion and why? How does this connect to your life? How were you challenged? What surprised you? What spoke to you and why? These are some of the questions that can get you started on this open-ended journal reflection. Take 5 minutes now, the clock is on, to do that 5-minute reflection, and then we'll come back as a group. Thank you. All right. How's everyone doing? Raise your hand if you need more time. Okay. Everyone else is pretty good? Okay, now the other thing I want to ask is raise your hand if you're sitting with folks from your class. Be honest, because you know what the next question is. I want you to move and try and at least sit with people from different classes. Because the thing that's going to be great is you're going to have a variety of perspectives when you have a richer conversation. Because remember, I said we have English classes here, we have fashion class, anthropology, sociology, political science, criminal justice. Am I missing any other disciplines? Fashion. So when you speak to people with other disciplines, you're going to get a different perspective as well. So we don't want you to think of these next questions as just from your own personal lens, but also thinking about how it ties into your class and your course. So this is your chance to get up and find a different seat. There are a few open seats. So who's moving? Hold on. What's your name here? You're just going to switch seats? Okay. We've got a book for you. That's what you're getting. You get a book. You get a copy of Gary's book because you were brave enough to move. Who else is going to switch seats? Come on. All right. So please switch seats, and then now with those markers and the big pieces of paper that's in between, you're going to have a conversation and listen up now to your prompt. Take a look at your own personal reflection and share the pieces that you feel comfortable sharing with the group. As a group, you can illustrate on the poster paper what you as a group are taking away from today's session and how it applies to your coursework and to your life in general. So you're going to have a conversation and you can just jot down some words that resonate with the group or some things that you have in common, and then you can scribble those onto the paper, okay? Let's start with a nice conversation. We have the name tags, so that way you can also get to know one another. So introduce yourselves around the table, your name, the course you're coming from, your major, and we're going to give you about 15 or so minutes for this part of the conversation. Thanks, everybody. How was the conversation? Marvelous. All right. So we've got a few more things we're going to do today. First one is we're going to share what you guys talked about. All right, but we're not going to put you on the spot. I just want you to shout out some of the words that you found inspiring. You can just use your voice and project. What were some of the things you found in common? If it was just reduced to one word. Yep, go ahead.
One of our main point was most people on this, like around here, will most likely not survive this situation.
Thank you for sharing that, Miko. Who agrees with that statement? Most of us would not have made it through these types of conditions. Yeah. Okay, I see a hand up over there. You can shout it out or you can come.
development and is the future of the United States.
Perfect. And remind me your name again?
Lady.
Okay, so you were right on because we're jumping the gun a little bit, but I do want to introduce you guys to these green sheets because what Nadine just said is if you want to see more of these types of things, I need to be able to have the support and the resources to do it. So when you fill out this feedback form, you can pass it around, just scan the QR code, and your feedback is great data that's going to help me make the case that I need more money sometimes to do these kinds of things. So that's really valuable for me to get that feedback. So if you agree with the statement there and you want to see more of these exciting talks and bring Garrett back maybe next year, then you can fill out this feedback form and give me that feedback. What other comments or things resonated that were in common with you? Stephen, go ahead. Speeches, all right. What other takeaways did you have? Motivational, thank you. What other things resonated that you had in common? Candace? No limitations. Great. Thank you. Chloe, I'm coming back to you, putting you on the spot. What did you guys come up with? Beautiful, thank you. So how Bear's family was reunited several times after being pushed apart. What about in the back? What are some takeaways? Over there, you guys had a lot of stuff going on. Yep, you? Yeah? Speak up, speak up.
I don't want to sound repetitive, but I think the most important thing was education for him.
Yeah?
Throughout the whole thing. The first thing that you mentioned was that living with the refugee camps, sort of learning about the alphabet.
Yeah.
And even though he was American, he wanted to get an education.
Thank you. That's an important point. Education. So hopefully Garrett's journey and motivation for his education will maybe make you show up to Kingsborough a little differently, right? Yeah. Perseverance. You want to elaborate a little bit? Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment that when I was listening to you, when I was listening to how you were talking, speaking to us about your experiences, it really just, it was so hard for me to like understand at first, like how you were just telling us this story, and you were able to keep your emotions in check, because I know it was just really difficult for me to understand, like how you were so calmly telling your story, and when I was really just like trying to conceptualize like everything you were saying, it was just so difficult for me to understand because it's like such a completely different world in America, and it's like all of these things like that we take for granted that in other places of the world are just not like things that other people have access to. Like just simply like you wanting to be able to learn just to go to school is something that you just weren't like. It's something that you don't have in Sudan. It's so hard to understand. To really like when I really think about it, it's really hard for me to understand that there are other places in the world where people can they just have to worry about just being able to live and see the next day, wake up tomorrow, and not like learning and trying to make a career and things like that. And we just take it for granted a lot in America. And it's just something to think about.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, you know, it took a long time for me to really open up, you know. And when you have a long journey that is so alienated to a lot of people, and then sometimes it's very difficult to tell your own story because it's quite not about your story if you think about it. So I'm not standing here because I have to tell you guys my story. It's not about my story. It's about what we can do together, you know. And to just develop that, it takes a long time, you know, to have that full understanding, you know, what you stand for, what you're about. And yeah, it took me a long time to really communicate myself to a lot of people. That's the reason, you know, playing basketball helps me to heal from a post-traumatic stress disorder. That was the best way for me. So communication came later on, just like anybody else. I'm still nervous about it, you know? Yeah.
Gare, would you like to make any concluding observations or remarks to close us out?
Oh, sure. Well, I'd just like to thank all of you guys for actually giving me an opportunity to be here with you and talk with you and share my story, and also you guys had to tell me how you feel about the whole story. So what can I say? This is an opportunity, and I'm happy to be here. And thanks so much, Ellen. It's been great talking to you guys, all of you. Zoom, you know. I'm in another country. I don't know if you guys are going to reach me or not. And then sometime I don't have network. Yes. And now we in one place, and I'm appreciative of you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Gare. Thank you so much to all of you for your great attention. So remember, take 2 minutes now and scan that QR code for me. That's really important. You can pass it around to your colleagues at your table. I'll also make sure that your professors get them. And then for Professor Martin Del Campo, Professor Enamorado, Professor Procaccio, Professor Palladino, the 4 of you are going to get a copy of Gare's book, and you'll get to give it away to someone in your class however you see fit. We'll do it that way. Yeah, Gare wrote a book. He wrote the book, but he didn't know about the movie.